Alright guys, my name is Goblin. Today, making a very quick video about why I still love classic WoW. So, I've recently been criticised a lot in my videos because I come across as extremely pessimistic about the game, and my voice sounds extremely miserable and condescending towards everything that goes on in classic WoW. Honestly guys, that is just my voice, to be honest. I mean, I just don't naturally have a very energetic voice. This is just my natural voice. It's always been a fairly slow and calm voice, it's just the way I talk. And honestly, I'm just not that much of a happy person at the moment. I won't go into detail about that, but what I'm trying to say is, it is just my voice, right? I'm not trying to sound miserable and condescending all the time, so in this video I want to just clear the air a little bit. I just review things the way I see them, and a lot of negative things are happening in classic WoW at the moment. And honestly, it's a case of, you know, bad news sells, good news doesn't. This is why you see a lot of people just criticising World of Warcraft overall, or Blizzard as a company. I think Pilav made an interesting point about this in one of his recent videos about how it's just become a meme, or it's become fashionable or trendy to criticise the game. And I think the reason why that is because, honestly, it just gets views. And obviously, YouTubers need to get views to put food on the table, right? And I definitely would agree with people that we just don't talk about positive things enough on YouTube, to be honest, about World of Warcraft. So that's just what I'm going to do today. Why not? I'm still madly in love with classic WoW. It's a great game, it's one of my favourite games of all time, but I honestly just don't like how the majority of the try-hard min-maxing classic WoW community has kind of ruined the game for me personally. So the only thing that I really dislike is an element of the community. But anyway, let's stop talking about negative things and let's talk about what makes this game so awesome. Although the leveling does get a little tedious after a while, since I've done it so many times, it holds up still as the best MMO leveling experience I've ever experienced. I love all of the long quest chains that take you on an adventure around the world, like the Missing Diplomat for instance. I don't really like how certain quest chains in retail World of Warcraft and other MMOs are in a hub. It's pretty much happened post Burning Crusade. You got a little area where you pick up all your quests, and there's a little area near those quest givers where you do all those quests. Obviously that is better for leveling speed, but I still love these little quests that quite literally take you on an extremely adventurous quest to the other side of a continent, like you're in a Lord of the Rings film. I know some people find these long quest chains an inconvenience and very irritating, but I honestly just love the novelty of them. I also very obviously love the leveling zones. I think Darkshire is my favourite zone of all time out of any single MMO in the entirety of gaming history. I love the concept of it, the atmosphere and the setting, because if you really boil it down, Darkshire is about battling your way through an undead infested creepy forest, doing a murder investigation and helping the Night Watch. I definitely have a weak spot for gothic adaptations, especially from studying it at university. When I went into Darkshire for the first time, I got the exact same feeling that I got when I read Dracula for the first time, or something like the Legend of Sleepy Hollow. The kind of atmosphere that a gothic adaptation conveys to the audience is just something I am naturally drawn to. Overall, I just think there are a number of zones in classic WoW that have a very evocative effect on the player that later expansions don't really have as much. Another example would be Ungoro Crater. Again, I'm going back to my literature references, but when I first went into Ungoro Crater, I felt exactly like I was reading The Lost World for the first time again. By the way, The Lost World is the book that kind of influenced Jurassic Park. But now let's talk about gameplay. I think the gameplay in classic WoW leveling is unparalleled, especially when you compare it to how bad retail gameplay is, where you can just one-shot a single enemy with one arcane shot. And I'm not even exaggerating guys, if you decked out your character in looms, you will just kill every single mob with one spell. I don't understand how that is engaging or challenging in any way. Obviously with classic WoW it is a totally different story. The gameplay is actually challenging because the mobs do genuinely feel threatening, especially when they are grouped up like a camp of the Defias Brotherhood. When you go past it, you genuinely feel fear, right? And same with a Murloc camp or anything like that. I have very fond memories of perfecting particular strategies on my rogue to deal with Defias camps, the Dark Iron Dwarf camps and wetlands and Null camps and everything like that. Because obviously when you pull one of these mobs, a great number more of those mobs will be pulled simultaneously, sometimes 3, maybe even 5 mobs, maybe even more. So I obviously came up with loads of weird, strange strategies to deal with that situation. I used to really genuinely enjoy that because that was challenging. I actually had to challenge myself and actually get good at my class to overcome particular difficulties in the game. For example, I may open combat with a sap to deal with one mob and then off gouge kite another mob, which was very difficult but more easy with a mouse over macro. Then I pop all the amount of cooldowns that I could to kill the first mob as quickly as possible, then deal with the second mob, and by the time I dealt with the second mob, the first one may come out of sap, but I may have to reset combat and deal with him later. Sometimes I would actually simply pull with sap, then pop evasion and all my cooldowns to kill one mob quickly while also tanking 3 mobs at once, but because I've got evasion up I'll be able to deal with it, and then just simply kill a mob very very quickly and then vanish, just so it would make the next pull easier. So point is, there was loads of different strategies and loads of things to do when it came to classic WoW leveling. I mean, a lot of people like to make out that, oh, you spam like 2 abilities for the whole leveling experience, 1 to 60 for hours and hours on end. It's just not true. There's a number of different unique situations, unique combat situations that you're going to get into that will require some initiative and innovative playstyles to overcome. Obviously, because the content in Classic WoW is so difficult, grouping up with friends is always worthwhile, or grouping up with random people you make in the open world, especially to deal with elite quests and things like that. So I always loved how the game pushed you to be social, because the game is so difficult that you would always be encouraged to group up with someone, whereas on retail you can basically, the group content, sorry, the open world content, even when you're leveling in a new zone, isn't very difficult at all unless you're pulling loads and loads of mobs at once, and then everything is shared. You don't have to be in a group of someone to get quest credit, you don't have to be in a group of anyone to kill any rare mobs or open world bosses or anything like that, so you're never really encouraged to ever go into a group of anyone, because the content is so easy to just do on your own. It's very anti-MMO. I've always called retail an anti-MMO game, and that's why I'm not considering playing it unless it becomes the best thing since sliced bread. The same goes with the dungeons. The dungeons are genuinely challenging. On retail you can literally just solo dungeons, well, the leveling dungeons anyway. You actually have to communicate with your group members if you don't want to wipe in a dungeon. You can't just go start to finish in a dungeon without saying a single word like you obviously can on retail when you're, randomly grouped up with 4 other people you don't know. And I mean, whenever I play retail, I don't think I ever talk to anyone in a dungeon group ever, unless someone did something wrong. And even when people do stuff wrong, there's very, very little communication. But anyway, obviously the dungeons themselves are a great mini-group adventure because of their challenge and the huge impactful rewards, like the, for instance, the blue pants that you get from the Nomeron quest reward, which is, which is extremely good and will actually last you to level 60. In some cases, dungeons even feel like their own zone, whereas on retail the dungeons seem to be... It seems like retail players are scared of a dungeon if it lasts more than 15 minutes, whereas in Classic WoW you can do a dungeon run for about 3 hours and absolutely love it from start to finish. When you're going through the entirety of Blackrock Depths, it really is just an adventure on its own. You could even make it... It's almost like... These days, entire games were released with less content than Blackrock Depths. I actually feel like that is true these days, because there's just so much to do in Blackrock Depths. Another one of my favourite dungeons is Stratholme, which has a really cool concept, because you're essentially fighting your way through a city infested with zombies. Feels like you're in a post-apocalyptic zombie film for a couple of hours, or playing like Left 4 Dead or something. When it came to the raids on Classic WoW, when I got to level 60 and started doing the raids, I think the first 2 months of raiding probably I enjoyed the most, in all honesty, because doing Molten Core for the first time and Elixir for the first time was definitely really fun. The gameplay still felt genuinely quite challenging, but when the world buff meta started to take over, then when the raids just got easier and easier because people got better and better gear with the 1.12 itemization and everything, this is where my interest in the game just started to waver a little bit, because I felt like the game became more of a about a competitive leaderboard on WoW logs than And I don't think Classic was ever meant to be about that, in my opinion. You know, it was meant to be about binding together as a community, as a guild, and even as a server to defeat difficult raid encounters and objectives that the game presents to you. And yeah, just group up with your buddies and kill a dragon. Like, that's all it was ever meant to be, because who can really complain at that? But the problem is these dragons weren't difficult encounters. I downed Nefari in my first attempt without even learning the tactics, right? I just honestly no longer felt the challenge like I did when I was playing on Nostarius. People always tell me, oh, just join a guild that doesn't min and max. Okay, my guild doesn't even force people to get world buffs, but everyone just does it anyway because people want to get better passes, and that's all anyone ever cares about. Okay, there are literally just no casual guilds on my server anyway, and I'd rather not leave my server where I know everyone, and I've got to know everyone, I've got a reputation, right, to just, totally re-roll on a new server. A lot of people do not have the luxury to just rejoin a guild that's more casual, and in all honesty, these so-called casual guilds that people keep talking about in my comment section, I just feel like they're non-existent. In all honesty, I think it's more of a utopian fantasy. I just do not see these guilds, I do not hear about these guilds, apart from a few odd comments in the comment section. I think that the reality is that everyone just is obsessed with world buffs, and it has obviously forced people to do raid logging. Anyway, I'm getting too negative again. I've always liked raiding. I like the banter that involved with raiding. Raiding is always a great thing to do in World of Warcraft. It's one of the best things to do in gaming, in my opinion, because it's very different to, like, say for instance, just doing a bit of Overwatch or playing that new Call of Duty game where you just queue with a few friends. It's a very different environment because you're quite literally grouping up in a group of 40 people to do a particular thing in a video game. It's a very unique experience. And I've always liked big gaming communities like that. It's the whole point of playing an MMO. I mean, the raids themselves have great lore and atmosphere that retail doesn't quite capture, in my opinion. I mean, Blackwing Lair, again, another literary example. I feel like him in The Hobbit. Going inside a mountain to kill a dragon and steal his fat loot, or the other rarer, lesser known Tolkien story, Farmer Giles, which is very similar to The Hobbit too. But it just has a farmer with a shotgun. It's quite cool actually. But anyway, I think Classic WoW captures a powerful high fantasy atmosphere akin to Lord of the Rings, but obviously, like I said before, I'm very drawn to, and I feel like honestly that started to be lost a little bit. That started to waver when the Burning Crusade comes out, because there's space goats and spaceships everywhere. Like the Draenei capital city is essentially a spaceship. And when you go into Outland, you can see planets everywhere. And I do like Outland. I do like the aesthetic of Outland, and the whole alien scientific feeling that it does give. But the great thing about Classic WoW is it's just the novelty of being in a Lord of the Rings-esque environment is just great. And then obviously it begins to wear off the more and more World of Warcraft evolves, and it's kind of a little bit of a shame, to be honest. But anyway, that's where I'm going to end the video there. I'm definitely ranted on long enough. My name is Goblin. Until the next video, ciao.